Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Jay Mass, and I'm back again with another dope New England adventure. Guys, it is an absolutely beautiful day out today. Even though it's early March, it is really warm out. It's like 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm just wearing a sweatshirt today, no jacket needed. This is the warmest day it's been since last year, so really gorgeous day out today. And I think that's going to complement today's exploration nicely, so I'm really excited for that. So right now I'm currently in the town of Manchester, Connecticut. Manchester is located right nearby Hartford, Connecticut, which is the capital city of the state of Connecticut. And here in Manchester, I'm just going for a nice little stroll in the middle of the woods, as you can see right here. Got the beautiful forest, and I also got a river right next to me, the Hockanum River. And the Hockanum River is going to play an important role in today's exploration, because we're actually going to be checking out some abandoned dams. These are going to be the former Adams Mill dams. Now, to give you a little bit of context, and I'll go more into the history later, but the Adams Mill was a very successful paper mill here in Manchester, Connecticut, that first opened up by Peter C. Adams in 1863. And throughout much of the 1860s and early 1870s, Peter C. Adams founded and constructed many more properties on the Adams C. Mill complex. And a lot of those mill buildings are actually still seen today. One of them is now a brewery, the Illicit Brewing Company. And at one point, there was also a restaurant, the Adams Mill Restaurant. But again, most of these mills are now repurposed and reused. What we're going to be checking out today are the abandoned portions of the mill complex, specifically the dams, the Adams Mill dams. And I believe the main one we're going to be checking out was actually built much later in 1907. Now again, I'll give you guys more history and details as we go on, but I'm really excited to check out these abandoned former Adams Mill dams here in Manchester, Connecticut, located right along the Hockanum River in the beautiful woods. So join me today as we check out these former Adams Mill dams. As always, guys, if you love urban exploration, checking out abandoned sites and exploring New England, I'm always doing that on the channel. Or you can follow me on Instagram at JMassOfficial. That's at JMassOfficial. But we're going to get right into it. We got quite a bit to see today. The abandoned former Adams Mill dams here in Manchester, Connecticut. I'll give you guys more of the history. Let's check them out. Check this out, guys. We got our very first Adams Mill Dam ruins right here off the side of the trail. This is really cool to see. So just to give you a little bit of context where we are physically. So this right here is the Adams Mill Trail here in Manchester, Connecticut. The trailhead actually begins right over there, and also right over there are the many former buildings of the Adams Mill complex. Now, I mentioned earlier there was the Illicit Brewing Company. That brewing company is in one of the former mill buildings right over there. There's a massive parking lot, and then you got the trailhead, the Adams Mill Trail. You follow it, and it leads you right here to one of the former Adams Mill Dam ruins. And that should pretty much tell you that this is a public property. All of these remnants are open to the public. Anyone can come here, anyone can enjoy them, and I absolutely love that. But this right here is one of the abandoned remnants. I don't know how many total dams there are. I believe there's quite a few of them, but this is one of them right here. Pretty dope. Let's go get a closer look. So I do just want to be upfront. I'm not exactly sure when this specific dam right here was built. If I had to take a wild guess, I would maybe say in the late 1860s or 1870s, but I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on that. But there are a couple other abandoned dam remnants we're going to be checking out, and I know the dates of at least some of them. But this one is pretty dope. Look at this. Made of massive bricks. Completely covered in moss and lichen right now. And unfortunately, there is quite a bit of graffiti here. This is the kind of graffiti I don't like to see. I've stated before, I do like seeing graffiti in some places, but not like this, But anyways, we got this really cool abandoned brick structure right in the middle of the woods right here. Actually looks like you can kind of peek in here. Check this out. This is a really cool structure. And you might be wondering, where is the water that this dam was supposed to be holding back? Well, as I showed you in the introduction, the Hockanum River is right over there. So if I had to guess at one point, the Hockanum River was actually routed over here to this dam. They probably had some sort of canal system by the mill complex to provide power and hydroelectricity. But this is one of the abandoned dams right here. Pretty awesome. And the other interesting thing too is, aside from the dams and the river, There's also a series of man-made dikes. And this is actually one of them right here. Huge mound of earth. And it almost looks like some sort of little canal. I don't know, it's really cool to see. This is very early American engineering, you know what I mean? Which is always a fascinating thing to see. Let's check out this side right over here, and then I think we'll keep on moving, but I do want to show you guys another glimpse of this opposite side. So we got some more bricks right here. It actually just rained yesterday, so it's a bit wet and slippery as I explore this place. Very cool stuff. I don't know exactly what kind of material this is made out of. Like, I don't think this is brick. It kind of looks like clay, but I'm not 100% sure. But the building material is fascinating. It's like very reddish blocks of stone, you know what I mean? I don't know, super cool. But yeah, this was the very first abandoned dam ruins we've explored. Super cool, and there's quite a bit more to see. All right, guys, so we're going to be departing from these abandoned dam ruins right now, and as I show you the absolutely stunning natural beauty of this forest and the river, I am going to give you guys a little bit more historical information. So again, this right here in front of us is the Hockanum River, and the Hockanum River played a pivotal role in the Adams Mill's history. I mean, keep in mind, the Adams Mill and its many buildings were built between the 1860s and the 1880s. And during that time, the primary source of power was hydropower, utilizing water to power the plants. And rivers were a great source of that because rivers are naturally moving structures that produce natural energy. That energy can be harnessed and utilized for power, hydropower. And a lot of these dams, and especially one of the dams we're going to be checking out today, helped harness that energy for the Adams Mill. Now, just a bit of a recap, the Adams Mill was founded by Peter C. Adams in 1863, but between the 1860s and the 1870s, many more buildings were added. In fact, some were added as late as the 1880s. The Illicit Brewing Company that I mentioned earlier, which is the modern-day brewing company that operates in one of the former Adams Mill buildings, was actually built in the 1880s, much later than most of the other mill buildings. But a lot of the dams were built at different points in time. The next dam we're gonna be checking out was actually built much later in the 20th century. But I think a lot of the dams, including the one we just saw, were much earlier than that, you know, mid to late 19th century. So pretty cool. But again, I gotta say, absolutely gorgeous spot. Really love the natural beauty here. Now, the last thing I want to end off is how the Adams Mill declined and eventually closed down. It was actually in the late 19th century, between the 1880s and 1890s, when the Adams Mill eventually closed down. And the reason being just the decline of Manchester, Connecticut's industrial prowess, pretty much. As industry began to move and reshape and reform, the Adams Mill was no longer needed, and it closed down sometime between the 1880s and 1890s, leaving the mill buildings in ruins for many decades. Now, a lot of those mill buildings today are completely refurbished and reutilized for other things. Again, the Illicit Brewing Company is a perfect example of that. But for many decades, those mill buildings were completely abandoned. All right, now this is actually the structure I was most excited to see. This is the abandoned hydropower station, complete with the dam it was attached to. And this is actually one of the much more recent abandoned structures on the property, because this whole complex right here was built in 1907. So the early 20th century. Now, as the name might suggest, this hydropower station supplied much of the power for the Adams Mill complex. Of course, there were many more, but this is one of the few remnants we have left behind, built in 1907. Now, from what I understood, there was a massive hurricane here in 1938 that actually caused this dam to burst. And I don't know if it was also in 1938 when this dam was completely abandoned and forgotten. It might have been later, but I did hear about that. There was a massive hurricane in 1938 that devastated this dam. So again, I don't know if that's the exact date that this thing was abandoned. But this is pretty cool. I mean, look at all these remnants. Apparently, this thing is actually made out of sandstone. And it's very similar to the other dam we saw, so kind of leads me to believe the other dam was probably sandstone as well, now that I think about it. But the power supply station itself is brick. This is a brick building, and it's actually quite large. The pictures online really don't make it look as big as it is. So in a second, we're actually going to head up and explore the inside of this hydropower station, see what's going on, but pretty cool. And then of course you got the Hockanum River right here, which once supplied the station with its power. All right, so we're now going to be heading inside of this brick building right here. Again, it's a lot bigger than it really looks on screen. I'm surprised by how large this structure is. The first thing you'll notice is that all the glass has been completely destroyed. Even though you have the bars, the window panes left behind, and these huge windows, none of the glass is still here. But it's a surprisingly intact structure. I'm actually surprised by how much of this is left behind considering its age. This is the inside, check this out. Pretty dope. It's quite a bit of graffiti here, and this graffiti is pretty cool in my opinion. Compared to the other dam we saw, this is actually some dope artwork. I kind of like this. Yeah, really cool. The first thing you'll notice, there are two massive holes right in the middle of the floor. And yes, there is an underground section. We're definitely gonna be checking that out in a little bit, but there is a way to get underground underneath this power station. Pretty cool. But we're gonna start off with up here. I mean, check this out. So this is the inside of the hydropower station right here, above one of the dams, one of the many dams that supplied power to the mill complex. Huge structure. Yeah, look at this. Also, it really does look a lot more modern than the other buildings we've seen. I mean, keep in mind, this was built in 1907, early 20th century, compared to the many mills and other dams that were built in the mid to late 19th centuries. Crazy, but pretty damn big. It makes me think that at one point, this thing was filled to the brim with different kinds of industrial machinery. There must have been a ton of machinery and equipment in this building at one point. Obviously, right now it's empty, but imagine how packed this thing must have been. There were probably pipes everywhere, huge equipment. It was probably loud and constantly moving, especially with the roaring river right nearby. It's actually right over here where the Hockanum River is. And this was the primary hydropower station. Pretty cool. But this was fascinating. I've always wanted to check this out, and I think in a second we're actually gonna head down below, see what's going on down there. All right, guys, so this right here is the sandstone dam that actually worked alongside the hydropower station to supply power to the Adams Mill complex. And you can see there's actually quite a bit of a tunnel that goes underneath. You might remember in that brick hydropower station, there were two massive holes that peeked down into the floor below. That's actually where this leads. This leads right underneath the hydropower station we were just at. And this, of course, is the station itself. So I think we're gonna venture in down below into this little dam right here, but really cool to see this up close. Again, at one point, this thing supplied major power to the Adams Mill complex. Look at that. All right, let's dive down below, see what's going on. Again, a lot of graffiti down here, looks pretty dope. Now, if you're wondering what this lower level was used for, I believe that it was used for industrial equipment as well. Obviously, above ground in the power plant itself, there was probably a lot of industrial machinery and piping and stuff. But I do think the same went for down here. I think there was also a lot of machinery and equipment down below here. I don't think there was water down here. But check this out. This is the lower level, pretty sick. That's where we just came out of, right over there. Again, so much cool graffiti down here. This I like, this is pretty cool. And it also looks like there's remnants of a bonfire. It looks like people were actually having a fire here. What is that? Christmas wreath. Christmas wreath with some Dunkin' Donuts cups. Might be a little late for Christmas now, but interesting. And this right here is actually the hole we were peeking up out of earlier. This is the brick power plant itself. You can see inside, apologies for the lighting, but this is the upper view of the brick hydropower plant we're just in. The hole and then right down below, super cool. So yeah, this is the lower level of the Adams Mill abandoned dam, built in 1907. All right, let's head back out and see what else we can find. Now, one more thing I just noticed, I just had to point this out because this was cool. There's actually a bit of a ladder right here. It leads up into this really narrow area right here, and it actually brings you up to the top. So I think I might have to check that out in a second, but there's a little ladder right there. And then I think I forgot to point this out, but down here in this tunnel, there's also a ladder over there. And that ladder also leads up into the brick hydropower station. So I'm assuming when these things were active, they had different points of entry. You know, this ladder right here, you could climb up, brings you up into the brick power station right here. But then this ladder right here actually looks like it brings you up into the open. So really interesting. I don't know why that was there though. If there's an entrance there, there must have been another building at some point. Not really sure. But yeah, I just want to point that out. Thought that was cool. Heading back out into the brightness and see what else is going on. Just wanted to show you guys a little bit more of this dam and hydropower area. So when I was actually filming, a graffiti artist actually came by and was tagging the area. And obviously I didn't want to film them, so I was being a little coy while filming, if you didn't notice. But now I got the place to myself. You know, now it's all mine, so we can do a little bit more in-depth exploration. But yeah, so that ladder I was talking about, that's actually this little hole right here, this porthole. Looks like you could have actually climbed up. I did try to do that, but a lot of the ladder rungs are missing. There was a huge gap, so I couldn't get up, but I mean, it just brings you up here anyways. There's a trail. The Adams Mill Trail, by the way, there's actually two subsections. There's a path here and a path down there right by the river, so pretty cool. This, of course, is the dam itself, the sandstone dam. We actually just walked down there, that tunnel, and that brought us right underneath here to, of course, the hydropower station. And that is the giant hole, or the two giant holes I was talking about. And the other ladder actually peeps up into that porthole over there. So pretty cool. There's a lot of different entrances and exits, you know, ways to get in and out. I don't know, this is a really cool structure. I kind of like it. This is obviously the main event of what we're going to be seeing today. I kind of fuck with it. It's a really cool spot. And again, completely open to the public. Anyone can come here. Anyone can explore and view this amazing history, which is really cool. I love public urbex sites. I think there should be more of them, frankly. All right, the last thing I want to do is head down here without tripping, which I've already sort of failed at. All right, ready? I'm going to jump. Whoa! All right, so I think these are some more remnants of the dam right here. You know, this giant cement structure jutting out into the river right here. You can also see a lot of this Hockanum River has been manually diverted by humans. And then there's a lot of stuff over here. There's like a little island thing. A lot of brick and sandstone, I believe. Wood everywhere. I mean, there are just so many remnants of human activity, old human activity from the 19th and 20th centuries. And then, of course, the hydropower station itself and the dam. Super cool remnants. I don't know, this is really fun. I'm gonna dig around a little bit more on the Adams Mill Trail, see what else I can find, but this is definitely the major prize for today. Really cool to see up close. Hey, excuse me, do you have a moment to talk about our Lord and Savior, J-Mass? So one really brief thing I want to mention, because I neglected to say this earlier. So as I discussed, the Adams Mill was a paper mill, and they produced many quality paper products. Apparently one of their biggest customers was actually Mark Twain, the legendary 19th century author. Mark Twain really loved their paper products and actually used them for myriad of his literary works, you know, his stories and novels and stuff. He actually used their paper for his writing, which is really cool. That's actually because Mark Twain, in the later years of his life, lived in Hartford, Connecticut. And as I mentioned at the start of the video, Hartford is right nearby Manchester, Connecticut, where we currently are. So really cool. I love it when history ties together like that. We're exploring the Adams Mill, and apparently it catered to Mark Twain and his literary works. Really cool stuff. All right, guys, I got two final things before we head out. So the first thing is, you'll notice this structure right here is actually the last and final abandoned dam we're going to be seeing today. So I looked into it. There are 3 total abandoned dam ruins. We saw the other 2. This is the third and final one. This one is completely covered in a ton of debris, you know, random scrap materials, and this dam is partially in use. So the main thing it's used for right now is part of the Adams Mill Trail. This is actually part of the trail right here. And on the other end of the dam is the Illicit Brewing Company. This is actually the brewery. Looks like the dam is actually part of their property now. But on this side of the dam, again, you see the ruins, all that brick and stone, and a bunch of random scrap. But it does look like this abandoned dam right here is sort of in use, you know, part of the brew garden, part of the trail right there. Pretty interesting. But this is the third and final abandoned Adams Mill Dam ruins we'll be seeing today. Although I gotta admit, it's definitely the more low-key of the three. I thought the other two were a lot more interesting, personally. Now, the final thing I want to show you guys before I head out are the former Adams Mill buildings. Now, as I mentioned, none of these are abandoned. They're all in use for other purposes today. This is one that you're going to be seeing right in front of me. I believe this is actually just storage. I think this is owned and used by the brewing company for storage. Whoever owns it, though, no trespassing whatsoever. There's signs everywhere. But this is one of the former Adams Mill buildings right here. And then, of course, as I just mentioned, this is the Illicit Brewing Company. This was once part of the Adams Mill building. You can actually see one of the brick portions right over there. Definitely looks like they've added on to it. But I did just want to show you, this is a pretty good example of what the mill buildings once looked like. And then the final thing is, of course, the trailhead right here. So this is the Adams Mill Trail that I've been taking. And feel free to pause if you want, but there's some pretty fascinating information. This is a lot of the Adams Mill history, as well as the history of the dams that we saw today. A little bit of a map right here. This is actually the hydropower plant we saw. This was the very first abandoned dam we saw. And then this was the one we just saw right there. That one right there is this one. So 3 total abandoned dam remnants. Pretty cool. Oh, and the last thing, I actually forgot to mention this. Apparently in 1869, there was a devastating flood that actually destroyed a lot of the dams along the Hockanum River. So yeah, pretty crazy stuff, but really interesting. I just want to show you guys that, the Adams Mill Trail, and of course, the Adams Mill buildings themselves, now in use, which is kind of cool to see that they've been refurbished. Hey, thank you guys for joining me. I've been J-Mass as always, and this has been another dope New England adventure. I gotta say, it was an absolutely beautiful day today, really nice and warm, the first time in months, and it was a really beautiful property to also explore. You know, when it comes to the natural beauty of this place, it can't be understated. It is a really gorgeous place. The woods are beautiful. The Hockanum River is beautiful. Definitely come here in the summer and fall, though. I bet this place would be fire. But as for the Adams Mill and the many dam remnants we saw, those were really fascinating to see. So as I mentioned, the Adams Mill was opened up in 1863 by Peter C. Adams, and it operated for many years producing quality paper products, many of which were actually used by Mark Twain, the really famous literary author from the 19th century. Now, the Adams Paper Mill was constantly adding different buildings to the complex, you know, especially throughout the 1860s, 1870s, and 1880s. But it was in the 1890s when the complex really died down, actually following Peter C. Adams' death in 1896, the mill all but basically shut down and abandoned. And it was abandoned for many years until recently when they started refurbishing and reusing a lot of these buildings, including today the Illicit Brewing Company. But the Adams Mill was once a flourishing staple of Manchester, Connecticut's industrial history. And we're getting, you know, today we got to see all those remnants today. You know, it's like a glimpse into the past. And the dams specifically were used to harness the power and energy that really pushed those mills to produce, especially the large hydropower plant we saw, which was actually built much later in 1907. But we did see a lot of the 19th century dams and their remnants scattered around the Hockanum River, which you can actually see flowing right behind me. But yeah, guys, that's been about it. If you love urban exploration, checking out abandoned sites, and exploring New England, I'm always doing that on the channel, so feel free to subscribe to the channel. Or you can follow me on Instagram at JMassOfficial. That's at JMassOfficial. But I've been JMass as always. This was the abandoned Adams Mill Dam. 3 dams total. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.